India-US relationship is being described as the most consequential relationship of this century. We know that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had visited Washington, but since then there have been many visits, including, of course, by the Deputy US Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, and of course, other officials to India. The Indian Finance Minister is in a US. But to talk about this very, very significant relationship with me is the Indian Envoy to United States. So welcome to WION and pleasure to have you here, sir. My first question, an obvious question is, how do you see this relationship going forward?
See, Sidhant, let's start off with the Prime Minister's visit. It was a very important landmark visit, very significant in terms of symbolism, atmospherics, substance. You are aware of the background of the visit, that COVID-19, you yourself are here. Then, of course, there are regional and global developments. Despite all those, the summit took place and showed the commitment of the leadership. And in this, if I may say, there were very clear 7 elements of the visit. So it was the first in-person bilateral summit with the President Biden. Then it was the first physical meeting with Vice President Harris. Then first in-person Core Leaders Summit. There were the bilaterals with Japan and Australia. There were focused meetings with top CEOs. There was the return of Indian antiquities. And then finally, the address to the UN. Now, let me come to the bilateral part. There were very clear 10 takeaways. So first, of course, in COVID-19 healthcare, which due to the situation was very much in focus. Then on climate, we heard of the concept of trusteeship. The Prime Minister underlined about climate finance, transfer of technology. Then the third issue was cyber, in which promoting critical infrastructure, building capacities was discussed. Then there was the tech, in which expanding partnerships in new domains, including emerging technologies like space, health security, semiconductors, AI, 5G, 6G, future generation telecom technology, blockchain, etc. Then there was trade, and in trade mechanisms like Trade Policy Forum, Commercial Dialogue, High Technology Working Group, Economic and Financial Dialogue, these all are coming into play again, and they will enhance trade and economic cooperation. And not to forget that movement of skilled professionals, students, investors, it was reiterated that this is a priority in the enhanced bilateral economic and technology partnership. 6 was defense, and that you know well. 7th was terrorism, and in that, cross-border terrorism, Mumbai attacks, use of terrorist proxies, working together to deny logistical, financial, military support to terrorist groups. All this was covered. Then 8th was Afghanistan. 9th was international organizations, and in which India's UNSC membership, NSG membership, they all came in. And finally, the antiquities. And in that, I want to underline in the joint statement, the Prime Minister and the President committed to strengthen efforts to combat the theft, illicit trade, and trafficking of cultural objects. And all those developments, the return took place under that. So what I said in the beginning, in terms of symbolism, atmospherics, substance, it was a very significant visit.
Mm-hmm. So specifically talking about the bilateral between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Joe Biden, this was the first in-person meeting between the two leaders since the change of guard in Washington as well. How significant it was, and how does it give the impetus to this relationship?
See, Sidhant, it was a very important meeting, both in terms of signaling and messaging. And substance, I've already mentioned to you the 10 takeaways. It was a very warm and a positive meeting. And I just want to bring to your attention that the skeptics for long have been saying that, once Biden administration comes in, there'll be a change of tone. But I think this was very visible. You were very much there. I think the chemistry was very much to be seen by all. And I must add here that in both the meetings, that is bilateral as well as in Quad, the chemistry was very visible, not only to all of us, but also to all the other leaders who were there. And in this, I would say, I think where it has gone, it is that trust and partnership is the key. There is the basic trust between the two sides. And if you permit me to say that the bipartisan character of our relationship has again been shown here. I've been part of this relationship for the last 20 years, and I've been underlining this. I have seen this grow, and this is very much reflective of that, this interaction, this chemistry. And mind you, they have earlier interacted in 2014, in 2016, I repeated that, but this very clearly showed that both are committed to taking the relationship ahead. As Prime Minister Modi himself said, that this is a decade of transformative India-US relations. And he underlined 5 T's: tradition, technology, trade, trusteeship, and talent. And I think the more challenges as we see, they are international in nature. So it's more imperative for us to work together. For example, COVID-19 surge. We have seen India and US, they have helped each other. This was recognized by President Biden himself and rest of the administration. So it's very clearly reflective that this chemistry, this meeting will play a significant role in giving indication of what is to come in future.
So we have seen a lot of visits as well. I talked about those visits which have happened just after the visit of the Prime Minister to Washington. What more can be expected in this relationship, and are there any visits on the anvil now?
See, it's not wrong to say that no area of human endeavor that is untouched by this important partnership. And in this, healthcare, IT, emerging technologies, energy, environment, education, knowledge partnership, infrastructure, supply chains, etc. We have seen in our joint statements, all of them have been covered. Now, take a look at the first 6 months itself. After Biden administration has taken over, there have been 2 in-person summits, the bilateral and Quad. There are 4 virtual summits, Quad, climate, COVID, G20. There were 4 telephone calls between Prime Minister and President Biden and Vice President. Several other engagements, you are aware, at the EM level, NSA, various cabinet ministers have been talking with their counterparts. In fact, the Commerce Minister yesterday interacted with his counterpart in Italy. And as you pointed out, the Finance Minister is very much in United States. She has had several meetings in Boston, and she'll be coming later this evening to Washington, DC. And from the US side also, there have been a number of visits. Secretary of State Blinken has visited, Secretary Austin has visited, Secretary Kerry has visited, Deputy NSA Neuberger has visited. And as you just pointed out, one of the senior most and most experienced diplomats, Deputy Secretary of State Sherman, just recently visited. As you have said, just between the time the Prime Minister has left, we have a very substantial Finance Minister interaction coming in, not only because of the fund bank meetings, but also on the bilateral level. And she's interacting with a number of key investment and business counterparts here. Plus, there will also be roundtables with number of investors. And I've already mentioned to you about the CIM. Then we have also had the visit of CDS and the Defense Secretary. The Defense Policy Group has met, and from US to India, the health dialogue has taken place, Industrial Security Agreement Summit has taken place, then Deputy USTR has visited. And as you asked, what is scheduled? The Economic and Financial Partnership Dialogue will happen this week. the Chief of Naval Staff of United States is visiting India. Then we have the Malabar Phase 2 exercises, which are next week. We have the Yudh Abhyas, the Vajra Prahar, then Trade Policy Forum, this is expected to happen soon. Then, of course, the 2+2 ministerial dialogue in December. And finally, the commercial dialogue, CEO Forum, HTCG, etc. They are all planned in the coming months. So a lot of action in coming days.
Sir, the visiting US Deputy Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, said the days of India-Pakistan hyphenation are gone. And she said that her visit to Pakistan basically is for a narrow bilateral purposes. What do you make of these comments?
See, Sidhant, I think the remarks speak for themselves. And I think it's very important to take them as they have been stated. And this is also reflected in number of similar statements from across the board in the United States, whether in administration, whether in the US Congress, whether in think tanks, media, and public at large. See, it's very significant to understand the length and depth of this relationship between the United States and India. Now, everyone here knows and has been speaking about the character of Pakistan. The events in Afghanistan has only exposed them even more. On the other hand, please look at the character and content of the relationship with India, which is very different. There is substantial cooperation, much deeper and wider, not only in counterterrorism and spanning in other sectors. Please take a look at the joint statement on counterterrorism. But as I have indicated to you, that the joint statement covered everything. It covered Mumbai, it covered cross-border terrorism, it covered terrorist proxies, denying of any logistical, financial, military support. But as I have indicated, look further, look at the depth of our relationship, whether it's healthcare, whether it's IT, whether it's digital, whether it's emerging technologies, whether it's environment, whether it's energy, whether it's education and knowledge partnership. So I think that speaks for itself.
So my last and final question to you is on the Quad grouping. Where do you see the grouping going ahead? And also, will it be a possibility in near future that India could be hosting the Quad groupings meeting? We saw the first meeting already happening in Washington, and it looks like this will be almost an annual trend now.
See, Sidhant, as I indicated earlier, that there are global challenges and they are therefore requirement of like-minded partners coming together. And I think Quad is a reflection of that. You are aware that there have been intensifying engagements in the Quad. In 2019, it was foreign ministers. Then the first virtual summit took place in March 2021. And at that time, President Biden had clearly indicated that he would like to hold the first in-person summit by end of the year. And you saw by September, the first virtual summit was held despite all the challenges and particularly of the COVID. You were here, you have seen what the situation is. Here, as far as the Quad is concerned, you know, the first virtual summit very clearly laid out 3 practical areas of cooperation. And those are very, very clear and grounded areas. So first was COVID-19 vaccines, in which 1 billion vaccines by 2022. And mind you, these are going to be produced in India. It is creating capacity in India. And that is very much on board. As far as the Quad summit document is concerned, you can clearly see it. Then in climate change and critical technology, again, this summit reviewed all this and took stock of the situation and further deepened it. And if I may add here that in this summit, the leaders have expanded the scope to include new areas, and important amongst them are space, in which there'll be exchange of satellite data, tackling climate change, sustainable uses of ocean, marine resources, and of course, responding to challenges in shared domains. Then in cyber security, in which cyber standards, workforce talent, and secure and trustworthy digital infrastructure. And then infrastructure itself. There is going to be an effort by all the 4 countries to map out the infrastructure needs, providing technical assistance, and promoting sustainable infrastructure development. And not to forget, for the first time, education has been part of the Quad initiative. There is a Quad fellowship program in STEM areas. And I don't need to remind you that amongst the 200,000 Indian students studying in the US, 2/3 of them are in STEM areas. And these all areas, these are practical, people-oriented, and they are underpinned by mutual respect, cooperation for global common good. And as Prime Minister Modi has himself highlighted, that this is a force for global good. And therefore, India is going to be playing a significant role in all these areas. And as I said, your last question about the annual meetings, I think the Quad joint statement itself mentions that they are committed and they will be meeting regularly.